All right, let's talk about the final step in any legal analysis, the conclusion. It's the part that everybody writes, but honestly, very few people truly master it. So if you're ready to make your arguments decisive and just unforgettable, you are definitely in the right place.
So, let me just ask you this right off the bat. When you think about IRAC, issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, which letter do you think is the most important? Now, I know most of us pour all of our blood, sweat, and tears into the A for analysis, and that makes sense. But what if I told you the real heavy hitter is the one we usually just rush through at the very end?
You guessed it, we're talking about the C, the conclusion. And look, it's not just the end of the page. It's the entire point of the page. It's the knockout punch that comes right after all the fancy footwork of your analysis. So today, we're going to transform that conclusion from just an afterthought into your argument's single greatest weapon.
Okay, so to really get why the conclusion is so important, we have to ground ourselves in the framework it's a part of. So let's do a super quick 30-second refresher on what IRAC is all about.
Just think of IRAC as the universal GPS for any legal argument. You start with the issue, which is basically the legal question you have to answer. Then you lay down the rule. That's the law that's going to govern the situation. After that, you've got the analysis, where all the magic happens. You apply that rule to your specific facts. And finally, the conclusion. That's your destination. It's the final, definitive answer.
Now here is where so many people get it wrong. They treat the conclusion like it's just a simple summary, a boring little recap of everything they just said. But its real job, its real job is so much more powerful than that. I absolutely love this analogy. Your analysis, that's the trial. It's where you're presenting all the evidence, you're cross-examining the facts, you're making your case. But the conclusion, that's the verdict. It's that moment the judge bangs the gavel and declares a final, binding decision. It's not a summary of the trial, it is the result of the trial. So what this really means is that a great conclusion has three core jobs to do. First, it has to be decisive. No wishy-washy language, no maybe, no it could be argued. Second, it has to provide finality. It needs to give your reader a clear sense of resolution, like the case is closed. And, maybe most important of all, it must directly answer the question you asked way back in your issue section.
Okay, that all sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do it? Well, don't worry, I've got you. I'm going to give you a super simple, 3-step blueprint that you can use every single time to write an absolutely killer conclusion.
Here it is. It's actually that simple. Step 1, start with a direct yes or no. Just be bold about it. Step 2, immediately follow up with the word because. Trust me, this little word is the magic bridge that connects your answer straight to your reasoning. And then step 3, state the one single most important rule or fact that proves you're right. That's it. Answer, because, reason. It's a formula that forces you to be clear, logical, and confident.
All right, enough talk. Let's see what this blueprint actually looks like out in the wild. We're going to take a really simple hypothetical and compare a pretty weak conclusion with a really strong one that we build using our 3-step formula. So here's our scenario. Let's call it the case of the thrown tomato. Bob gets really mad at Alice and he chucks a tomato at her, but his aim is terrible and it misses completely. Now, the rule for battery requires an intent to cause a harmful or offensive contact. So the legal issue here is pretty simple. Did Bob commit battery even though the tomato never actually touched her? Okay, check out the difference here. First, let's look at the weak conclusion. Therefore, it is possible that Bob could be found to have committed battery, but it depends. You see how that's just full of fluff? It doesn't actually give you an answer. Now look at the strong one. It's a masterpiece of efficiency. It kicks off with a definitive yes. That's our answer, step 1. Then it uses that magic word, because. That's our bridge, step 2. And finally, it gives the core reason. The rule only requires the intent to make contact, not successful contact. That's step 3. Answer, because, reason. It's decisive, it's clear, and it is totally confident.
So, as we're wrapping up here, I really want you to start thinking about your conclusion differently. It's not the end of your work, it's the culmination of it. It is the flag that you plant at the top of the mountain after a really long and difficult climb.
And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? You can write pages and pages of the most brilliant, insightful analysis in the world, but if you cap it off with a weak, indecisive conclusion, you've basically just led your reader on this long, winding journey and then left them stranded in the middle of nowhere. Your conclusion is what gives all that hard work its meaning and its power.
So the next time you sit down to write an argument, don't just finish it, land it. Use this blueprint. Be direct, be decisive, and be definitive. Because now you know the secret, right? The conclusion isn't just the end, it's how you win.